I'm guessing you're also looking at that electric bill each month and thinking, there has to be a better way.
Exactly. We all feel it, right?
Right. And it's not just about, shaving off a few bucks here and there. It's about like really taking control, finding ways to significantly slash that bill without needing to become, an electrical engineer.
And you know what the really interesting thing is? You've sent us a ton of research articles, reports, all pointing in the same direction. There's a really smart strategy out there that could help people save potentially thousands of dollars on their electricity bill. And it all comes down to combining the reliability of grid with some clever off-grid solutions.
Kind of like having your cake and eating it too,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You get the security of being connected,
Mhm.
but also the freedom and the savings that come with generating and managing at least some of your own power.
That's the goal.
So our mission today is to really dig into all this great research you've given us, pull out the most valuable, the most actionable nuggets, and hopefully give our listeners a clear path to making this a reality in their own homes.
I love that.
So where do we even begin with all this? Where does someone who's, just starting to explore this whole idea of saving money on electricity, where do they even begin?
Well, the very first step, and this is something that is emphasized time and time again in the research you provided, is that you absolutely have to have a crystal clear understanding of where your money is going right now.
Makes sense.
You can't effectively reduce consumption if you don't know what's consuming it in the first place.
So it's like detective work, you're saying?
Exactly. It's energy detective work.
Okay, so we got to put on our detective hats. Then what are the actual practical things people should be doing to figure out, their energy footprint? What's using all the juice?
There are 3 key things you want to focus on. First, an energy audit of your home. And that means pinpointing which appliances, which systems are the real energy hogs in your house.
Okay.
And, the data is pretty clear on this. The usual suspects are often things like your HVAC system, your heating and cooling, sometimes accounting for something like 40% of your total energy bill.
Wow, 40%? That's a huge chunk.
It is huge. Water heaters are another big one. They usually come in around 14%, and then your refrigerator is often somewhere around 8%.
So 40% just for keeping the house warm or cool.
Yeah, it can be a big one. And that's why it's so important to understand, what your biggest energy users are so you can start to think about how to use them more efficiently.
So how do you actually go about doing an energy audit? Is it something that requires fancy tools and equipment, or can people do it themselves?
You can actually start pretty simply just by really paying attention to your habits and, even looking at your past electricity bills to see if there are any patterns. Do you notice spikes in certain months? Are there times of year where your bills are always higher than others? But if you want to get even more granular, you can actually leverage some tools that are readily available. Believe it or not, a lot of utility companies now offer online tools or even detailed breakdowns of your hourly or daily energy consumption.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's amazing they're actually starting to provide some pretty sophisticated data. And that leads us to the second key action, monitoring your usage patterns.
So tracking when you're using the most energy.
Exactly. Because once you see when those peaks are happening, you can start to, connect the dots. You can see, okay, well, every day at 5 p.m., my bill goes up because that's when I get home and turn on all the lights and start cooking dinner,
Right. Especially if you have time of use rates where the price of electricity actually fluctuates throughout the day.
Oh, yeah, that can make a huge difference.
So monitoring your usage patterns is key. Okay, what's the third action?
The third one is calculating your baseline energy usage. So essentially, this is your average monthly kilowatt-hour consumption over a period of time, maybe take the last year, for example, and that becomes your benchmark. So when you start making changes to your habits or you implement some of the cool energy solutions we're going to talk about, you'll be able to measure the impact. Did you actually reduce your consumption compared to your baseline?
Okay, so you're saying understand your current usage, figure out what's using the most energy, and then that gives you a solid foundation to start making changes and actually track your progress.
Exactly.
I love it. Okay, so let's talk about these hybrid energy systems you mentioned before, this idea of combining grid power with your own off-grid solutions. I mean, sounds like a really smart approach. Can you break down how it works and what the main components are?
Sure. The beauty of a hybrid system is that you're not completely disconnecting from the grid, so you still have that reliability and access to power whenever you need it. But you're strategically incorporating your own power generation and storage to offset a significant portion of what you would normally be buying from the utility company.
Okay.
And for most homeowners, solar power is the logical starting point. It's becoming increasingly accessible, and it can make a huge difference.
Yeah, solar is definitely top of mind for a lot of people these days. One thing I thought was interesting in the research was that you don't need to cover your entire roof with solar panels to start seeing real benefits.
Absolutely. That's a common misconception. People think it's all or nothing. Either you go full solar or it's not worth it. But even a relatively small system, something like a 2 or 3 kilowatt system, can offset a surprisingly large chunk of your energy use.
How much are we talking about here?
Well, the research suggests that a system of that size could offset somewhere between 30% to 40% of the average home's electricity usage.
Wow, that's way more than I would have thought.
Yeah, it can make a real dent in your bill.
So if you're generating that much of your own power, does that mean you're essentially selling the excess back to the grid?
Yeah, so with a grid-tied system, any excess electricity that your panels generate during the day gets sent back to the utility company, and often you'll actually earn credits on your bill for that.
Interesting. So it's like your meter is running in reverse.
Exactly. And then you can use those credits to offset your usage during times when your solar panels aren't producing as much.
I see.
But there's an even smarter way to leverage solar, and that's by incorporating battery backup into the equation.
Oh, right. I read about that. What's the benefit of adding batteries to the mix?
Well, with batteries, you're essentially creating your own little energy bank.
Okay.
So during the day, your panels are not only powering your home, but they're also charging these batteries. Then as the sun starts to go down, or during those peak rate hours when electricity from the grid is most expensive, you can seamlessly switch over and draw power from your batteries instead of from the grid.
So you're using your stored solar energy to avoid those peak prices. That's smart.
Exactly. And of course, the other huge benefit of having batteries is that they provide a backup power source in case of a grid outage. So if the power goes out, your home can keep running on stored solar energy.
So it's like peace of mind and savings all in one.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's talk numbers.
Yeah.
What kind of financial investment are we looking at if someone wants to install, let's say, a 3 kilowatt solar system with battery backup?
So according to the research, the upfront cost for a system like that is typically somewhere in the range of $6,000 to $9,000, and that's after you factor in the federal tax credits that are available for solar installations.
Okay.
And in terms of ongoing savings, you could potentially see something like $500 to $800 knocked off your annual electricity bill. So it's a pretty significant chunk of change.
Yeah, that adds up fast.
It does. And that means that the payback period for a system like that is usually somewhere between 7 to 10 years.
Okay, so in less than a decade, you've essentially paid off your solar investment, and from that point on, it's pure savings.
Yeah, and one thing that's not always factored into those calculations is the fact that the cost of electricity from the grid is pretty much guaranteed to keep going up.
Right, inflation, energy demand, all that.
Exactly. So
Mhm.
when you consider that over the 25 to 30-year lifespan of a typical solar panel system, the actual savings could be significantly higher than what you initially project.
Interesting. So it's like locking in a lower energy price for decades.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've covered solar. That's one big piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
But the research also mentioned something called the ultimate off-grid generator.
Yeah.
That name, it sounds pretty powerful. What makes this different from a regular generator?
Well, what's really cool about the ultimate off-grid generator is its versatility. Unlike a typical generator that runs on, gasoline or propane, this system can actually draw power from multiple sources.
Okay, like what?
So it can be hooked up to solar panels. It can even be connected to a wind turbine if your property is suitable. And it also has this really neat manual charging feature. So you can actually generate power by, turning a crank or using some other mechanical input.
Wow, so it's like a human power generator.
It is. It's amazing. And it really aligns with this whole idea of having a diversified energy approach.
Right. Having multiple options, not being reliant on just one source.
Exactly. And another great thing about it is that it's designed to be scalable. So you can start with a base unit that meets your immediate needs. And then over time, you can expand its capacity. You can add more solar panels. You can connect a wind turbine. You can basically grow your system as your energy needs evolve.
That's really cool. So you don't have to do everything all at once. You can kind of start small and build it up over time.
Exactly. And it also integrates seamlessly with battery storage. So any power you generate from, solar, wind, manual charging, you can store it in batteries and use it later.
So how much more independent can someone actually become? If they have this generator and maybe some solar panels, are we talking about like going completely off grid?
Well, it depends on how you set up your system and what your energy needs are. But based on what people have reported, those who have implemented a combination of solar and the ultimate off-grid generator, they're seeing a significant reduction in their reliance on the grid.
How significant are we talking about?
Well, some folks are reporting a reduction of 25% to 50%.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. I mean, that's cutting your grid dependence in half, potentially.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful. And, when you combine that with some of the energy saving habits we talked about earlier, you can really start to take control of your energy usage and your monthly bills.
Absolutely. All right, so we've talked about the big investments, solar panels, the ultimate off-grid generator, but what about some of the smaller things people can do right now? Things that don't require a huge upfront cost, but can still make a difference in their bills.
Oh, yeah, those quick wins are really valuable, because they're things that you can implement right away without breaking the bank, and they can often have a noticeable impact on your energy consumption.
Give us some examples.
Well, one of the simplest things you can do is be mindful of peak usage avoidance. So if your utility company offers time of use rates where the price of electricity varies throughout the day, try to shift your energy intensive tasks to those off-peak hours when electricity is cheaper.
Okay, so like doing your laundry late at night instead of during the day.
Exactly. Or running the dishwasher after dinner instead of right when you get home, things like that.
Makes sense.
Another big one is eliminating phantom loads. Those sneaky little energy vampires?
Phantom light.
Yeah. So many electronic devices, they continue to draw power even when they appear to be turned off. Things like your TV, your computer, your coffee maker, they're all silently sucking energy even when you're not using them.
Wow, I never really thought about that.
Yeah, it's a hidden energy drain, but the good news is it's easy to fix simply by plugging those devices into power strips. And then when you're not using them, completely switching off the power strip, you'd be amazed how much energy that can save.
How much are we talking about here?
Well, the research suggests that eliminating phantom loads can save you up to $200 a year.
Really, just by turning off power strips?
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
That's a no-brainer.
It is. And then the third quick win I would recommend is smart thermostats.
Okay, I've heard of those, but how do they actually save energy?
So smart thermostats, they allow you to program your heating and cooling system to automatically adjust the temperature based on your schedule and your preferences. So for example, you can set it to lower the heat when you're away at work or asleep, and then warm the house back up before you get home or wake up.
That makes sense.
And by doing that, you can avoid unnecessary energy consumption for heating and cooling, which, as we talked about earlier, is often the biggest energy hog in the house.
Right, and how much can you actually save with a smart thermostat?
Well, typically they can reduce your HVAC costs by 10% to 15%.
Not bad, especially since we already know HVAC could be like 40% of your energy bill.
Exactly.
All right, so those are some great quick wins that people can implement right away. Now, let's get back to the bigger picture stuff.
Yeah.
How does someone actually go about integrating solar panels and the ultimate off-grid generator into their existing energy setup? Where do they start?
Well, when it comes to solar, the research emphasizes the importance of prioritizing your critical energy needs first.
Okay.
So think about the appliances and systems in your home that are absolutely essential, the things that you can't live without and that use a lot of energy.
So refrigeration to keep your food from spoiling.
Exactly. And then maybe partial support for your HVAC system, especially if you live in a climate with extreme temperatures. You want to be able to keep your house comfortable.
Right.
So focusing your initial solar investment on those key areas will give you the most bang for your buck. It'll have the biggest immediate impact on your energy bill.
Okay, that makes sense. What about the placement of the solar panels? Does that matter?
Oh, yeah, it definitely does. Ideally, you want to position your solar panels so that they're facing south, if possible. A south-facing installation can actually generate up to 40% more electricity compared to panels that are facing other directions.
What? That's a huge difference.
It is. So it's definitely worth taking the time to plan out your solar installation carefully to make sure you're maximizing your energy production.
Okay, and are there any specific types of solar panel systems that are better than others?
One type that's really worth looking into is a microinverter system.
Okay, what's that?
So with a traditional string inverter system, all the solar panels on your roof are connected together in a series, kind of like, Christmas lights. So if one panel isn't performing well, maybe it's shaded or something, it actually drags down the performance of the entire string.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's kind of like a weakest link scenario, but with a microinverter system, each individual solar panel has its own little inverter attached to it, so it operates independently. And that means that even if one panel is shaded or having issues, the other panels can still operate at their full potential.
So it's a more robust system.
Exactly. And it also makes it easier to expand your system in the future. If you want to add more panels, you don't have to rewire the whole thing. You can just add new panels with their own microinverters.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the ultimate off-grid generator now. How does that fit into the bigger picture alongside solar panels?
So I like to think of the ultimate off-grid generator as like a valuable sidekick to your primary renewable energy source, like solar. It can step in and provide power when solar isn't enough, or during those critical moments when you need a reliable backup.
Okay, so like during a power outage.
Exactly. It can automatically kick in and keep your essential appliances running, things like your refrigerator lights, maybe some outlets so you can charge your phone. You don't have to be completely in the dark.
That's huge, especially if you live in an area where power outages are common.
Absolutely. And you can also use it strategically to offset your grid usage during those peak demand hours when electricity prices are at their highest. Instead of drawing expensive power from the grid, you can switch over to your generator and run off your stored energy.
I like it, so it's like a multi-purpose tool.
Exactly. And with smart controllers, you can even automate the whole process. You can set it up so that your system seamlessly switches between the grid solar panels and the generator to optimize your energy savings and ensure you always have a consistent power supply.
That sounds pretty high-tech.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
All right, so this all sounds amazing in theory, but I'm sure a lot of people are wondering what kind of results they can actually expect.
Yeah.
Does this really work? Are people really saving money with these systems?
Well, that's where the real-world case studies and the research come in. They provide some really tangible examples of what's possible.
Okay, let's hear about them.
So one of the case studies featured a family, the Johnsons. They live in a typical suburban home, about 2,200 square feet. And before they made any changes, their average monthly electricity bill was about $245.
Okay, that's pretty typical, I would say.
Yeah, and they decided to install a 4-kilowatt solar panel system. And they also integrated the ultimate off-grid generator into their setup. And guess what their new average monthly bill is now?
I don't know, $100.
Even lower, it's just $92.
Wow, that's a massive difference.
It is, and that translates to annual savings of over $1,800.
That's huge. And what about their payback period?
Yeah.
How long will it take them to recoup their initial investment?
So based on their costs and their savings, it's estimated that their payback period is just under 6 years.
Wow. So in less than 6 years, they've essentially paid off their system, and from that point on, it's all savings.
Exactly. And remember, this is based on today's energy prices, which are almost guaranteed to go up. So their actual savings over the lifetime of the system could be even higher.
That's incredible. Okay, what about the other case study, the rural homestead? Tell us about that one.
So this was a larger property, about 5 acres with a workshop. So their energy needs were obviously quite a bit higher than the average family.
Right, makes sense.
And their previous electricity bill was around $380 a month.
Ouch.
Yeah, it was a big one, but they went all in. They installed a 6-kilowatt solar array. They even added a small wind turbine to take advantage of their location. And of course, they included the ultimate off-grid generator.
Wow, that's a pretty comprehensive setup.
It is, and their results are amazing. Their monthly electricity costs now range from $45 to $65, depending on the season and how much they're using their workshop.
Wow, so they're basically off the grid.
Pretty much, and their annual savings are estimated to be over $3,700 with a payback period of around 7 years.
That's incredible. So these real-world examples really show that this stuff is not just hype, it actually works. People are saving serious money with these systems.
Absolutely. And what's really inspiring is that it's achievable for people with different needs and different budgets. You don't have to have a huge property or a ton of money to start making a difference.
Right. And I think that's a really important point to emphasize. Okay, so I'm sure some listeners are hearing all this and they're excited, but they're also thinking about the potential challenges. What are some of the roadblocks that people typically encounter when they start exploring these energy solutions, and how can they overcome them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, one of the most common challenges, especially for people who live in urban areas, is limited roof space.
Right. If you're in an apartment building or a townhouse,
Yeah,
you might not have a lot of room for solar panels.
exactly. But there are solutions for that.
Yeah.
If you have some available land, you can always consider a ground-mounted solar system.
Okay.
And there are also these really innovative vertical solar installations that can be integrated into walls or fences.
Really, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then, of course, there are high-efficiency solar panels that can generate more power per square foot. So even if you have a small roof, you can still get a decent amount of energy production.
That's great to know. What about people who live in communities with HOAs? Sometimes those organizations can have pretty strict rules about what you can and can't do to the exterior of your home.
Yeah, HOAs can definitely be a challenge, but there are ways to navigate those restrictions.
Okay, like what?
Well, for starters, there are some pretty sleek and aesthetically pleasing solar solutions available these days, things like solar shingles that blend in really well with traditional roofing materials.
Okay.
And you can also explore less visually prominent mounting options for standard solar panels so they're not quite as noticeable.
Right.
And then in situations where solar installations are just not feasible, maybe the HOA is really strict or your roof isn't suitable, you can always focus on the ultimate off-grid generator as your primary solution.
That makes sense. It's not as visible, so it's less likely to run afoul of HOA rules.
Exactly.
Okay. And of course, the biggest hurdle for a lot of people is the upfront cost. I mean, solar panels, a generator, batteries, it can all add up pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's definitely a real concern, but it's important to remember that this is an investment.
Right.
And it's an investment that can pay for itself over time. And then once you've recouped your initial costs, you're essentially getting free energy for the rest of the system's lifespan.
Yeah. And you're also hedging against future energy price increases.
Exactly. And, the good news is that there are more and more financing options available these days, specifically designed for renewable energy projects, so you can spread out the cost over time, make it more manageable.
Oh, that's good to know. Are there any other tips for dealing with the cost barrier?
Well, another approach is to do a phased implementation.
What do you mean by that?
So instead of trying to do everything all at once, install a huge solar array and buy the biggest generator you can find, start with a smaller system that addresses your most critical energy needs, maybe just enough solar to power your refrigerator and some lights. And then as you start to see those savings roll in, you can gradually expand your system, add more panels, upgrade your generator.
So it's like a step-by-step approach.
Exactly. You don't have to bite off more than you can chew.
I like that it makes it feel less overwhelming.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about technology hardware, but the research also emphasized the importance of adopting smart energy habits.
Mm.
How do those behavioral changes play into the bigger picture?
Oh, they're absolutely essential. Technology is a fantastic tool, but it's only as effective as the person using it. So even if you have the most advanced solar system and the best generator in the world, if you're not mindful of your energy consumption habits, you're not going to maximize your savings.
Right, it's like having a fancy sports car but never taking it out of first gear.
Exactly. So, there are some simple things you can do to adjust your habits. For example, being more aware of seasonal variations in your energy use.
Okay.
Understanding that your heating demands are going to be much higher in the winter and your cooling demands will be higher in the summer, and then adjusting your thermostat accordingly. And then strategically bundling energy-intensive tasks. So if you know it's going to be a sunny day and your solar panels are going to be cranking out power, that's a great time to do all your laundry, run the dishwasher, take advantage of that free energy.
Right, so it's about being mindful and planning ahead.
Exactly. And then another great tip is to connect with other people who are interested in energy independence. There are tons of local groups, online forums where people share tips and tricks, advice on navigating local regulations, things like that.
So it's like tapping into a community of knowledge.
Exactly.
All right, so it sounds like the technology and the smart habits, they really go hand in hand.
They do. They're both crucial for achieving your energy-saving goals.
Okay, so let's zoom out even further and talk about the bigger picture.
Hmm.
What are some of the broader benefits of adopting this hybrid energy approach that go beyond just saving money on your electric bill?
Well, first of all, the financial savings are obviously a major motivator. But when you factor in the fact that electricity prices are pretty much guaranteed to keep going up, these savings become even more valuable over time.
Right.
It's like you're protecting yourself against future price hikes.
That's like an investment in your financial security.
Exactly. And then there's the added benefit of increased resilience.
Yeah.
By reducing your dependence on the grid, you're making your home more self-sufficient, more prepared for power outages or grid disruptions, which are becoming increasingly common in many areas.
Right. And that peace of mind, knowing that you have backup power, that's invaluable.
Absolutely. And then, of course, we can't forget about the environmental benefits.
Yeah.
The average home that transitions to a hybrid energy system can reduce its carbon footprint by several tons per year.
That's significant.
It is. And then there's even some evidence that homes with renewable energy systems tend to sell for more than comparable properties.
Really? So it can actually increase your property value.
It can. It's like adding another layer of value to your home.
Interesting. And I think it's really important to reiterate that you don't have to go completely off the grid to reap these benefits. Even a partial transition to hybrid energy can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. You can start small, focus on the areas that will have the biggest impact, and then gradually expand your system over time as your budget allows.
So it's all about finding the right balance for your needs and your circumstances.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's wrap this up and give our listeners a clear takeaway message. What would you say is the key message that people should walk away with from this deep dive?
I would say the key takeaway is that combining the reliability of the existing power grid with some smart, strategically chosen off-grid solutions like solar power and the versatile ultimate off-grid generator can offer a really powerful pathway to achieving significant savings on your electricity bills while also increasing your energy independence and contributing to a more sustainable future.
Absolutely, and it all starts with understanding your current energy usage, knowing where your energy dollars are going, and then from there, you can start exploring the different options and solutions that align with your needs, your budget, and your lifestyle.
Exactly.
And remember, even starting with those easy wins, those small changes that we talked about earlier, can make a big difference over time.
Absolutely. Every little bit counts.
And don't be afraid to think big. Look at those case studies we discussed. There are real people who are achieving real results, and those results could be yours too.
Absolutely.
All right, so on that note, here's a final thought for our listeners to ponder. We've talked about the average annual increases in electricity prices. We've seen the potential savings that hybrid energy can offer. So here's the question. How might making a proactive move towards a well-designed hybrid energy system not only save you a significant amount of money right now, but also provide a growing sense of financial security and energy independence for years and even decades to come?
That's a great question, and I think it's one that everyone should be asking themselves.
Absolutely. Thanks for diving deep with us today. It's been a fascinating conversation.
My pleasure.
All right, until next time, stay curious and keep learning.
And keep saving.
And keep saving.
All right. Bye.
Bye, everyone.